Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today. Tacitus, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about how a market-based economy and a commonly agreed meritorious system for determining sort of success and wealth and so on. And when I say market competition, I mean as in individual choice, as well as competing to provide the best quality goods and services, or competing to come, the top of the class at school or something like that, or any form of independently assessed merit, pass or fail exams. Now we all accept that. So say in sports, in the Olympic Games, we all accept that the fastest runner should win the race and get the gold medal and receive the accolades. We accept competition there, but there's really today no other area of society where we accept competition in an absolute sense. We could say that, well, there still is competition, because the most radical Marxist ideological fanatic will get the best paid job in the diversity and inclusion department. Or, we can look competition in an ideological sense, as in the 1984 scene where they have to scream hatred for 5 minutes a day, and the person that screams the loudest and most prominently is considered to be ideologically the most sound and get the best job. This was also the appeal of communism, where the communist sort of social structure could say, well, in a capitalist economy, there has to be winners and losers, but in a socialist economy, there isn't any losers. You're all technically winners, or depending on your point of view, all technically losers. So decisions were made ideologically rather than on any form of independent or impartial merit. So people who were of really no ability other than being ideological fanatics, they could do quite well for themselves. And there was still a system in communism where if you were considered to be ideologically sound, they would give you a better apartment, access to better shops where you could buy Western goods, or access to cinemas where you could watch Western movies, things like that. So there was still a reward system. It just wasn't in ownership of goods and so on. So it was access to services determined how well thought of you were. And of course, we're moving to that system, that communist type system in the West now. If you're bad, you won't have access to good jobs or a banking system or something like that. So they're doing that now. It's slowly coming in the supposedly capitalist West. But I want to talk about particularly tyranny, or the centralization of power, which leads to the arbitrary exercising of power without accountability, which is what we're almost at now in the West, or fast moving to it. Some of the things that Western governments are now doing to the people and imposing and forcing on the people, they could never do in a democracy and a system of merit and in a market kind of competitive system. They just plain couldn't do it. Now, I'll sort of put this, I'll start off in the micro level just to make it, I guess, more understandable. But say as a CEO of a company, I'm a CEO, so say of a company, just a few hundred people, it's like a high tech sort of firm, but so it's more knowledge and intellect intensive than it is people intensive. So there's a lot of PhD dudes running around here in this outfit. So at a time when a PhD was determined by merit, or in the West at least at the time, there's a lot of Indian PhDs came in and they were simply from the Brahmin caste, and they were gifted their degrees because of their social status. And they hadn't actually done the work. But nonetheless, looking at this now, we're in a very competitive section of the market. So we had to have a very good research and development department. We had to come out with new products on a regular basis, or significantly enhanced product from the existing product range. We had to be very quick and on the ball with the sort of quality of service we delivered. The technical salespeople had to be able to go out and explain how things worked and how this product and its technology would help this business, and so on. Yeah, so there needed to be pretty high quality people at all levels. Now, I don't know if we ever fully achieved the chairman of the board was a very well-connected, very rich socialite, and he was constantly putting me under pressure to hire his useless idiot buddies and so on and their relatives. So that was kind of a drag on things. And that'll always go on. You'll never not have that. But overall, we had to be better than the folks down the road or the guys up around the corner if we were going to succeed commercially. Now, that's what market competition does. Now, the chairman of the board, who was, again, came from a very rich family, was himself very rich, and he didn't have to worry about money. Market competition was something he didn't think about. He could just insider trade in the stock market. He could insider trade on real estate, and he could make his money there. So it was almost zero risk, very high return. And he saw the world that way, and he had no real concept of what it was like to compete to succeed. He liked to succeed. He liked to think that the business he was chairman of was succeeding in the market. But in terms of his concept of how to compete and win in the market, he really had no idea. Now, I only had to put up with him at once a month at the monthly board meeting where I had to do my report, but otherwise, he wasn't. Sometimes he would come around and try and interfere. And just get in my face and annoy. But I had to give that lip service, and he demanded he could appear at any tick of the clock, and I had to drop what I was doing, and no matter what it was, and placate his some whim. He'd heard something somewhere or read something somewhere, and it was just nothing but a pain in the ass because the guy didn't have a fucking clue. But the reality is we had to compete, and so power. So I had to hire people and tolerate people who could get the job done. So I had to tolerate genius computer programmers and genius product inventors and things like that, and people who are very, very good at that sort of thing. If you're like, technically sort of conceiving the future, they're not easy people to get on with. They don't accept direction very well. Any sort of guidance or can you do this, can you do that, is treated as something of an imposition, if not an outrage. So they've had to be handled with some sort of care and tact and diplomacy. No, I'm not the most tactful guy in the whole universe or anything, but I just had to bite my tongue many times in talking to them, and just try and sort of gently cajole them into moving in this or that direction, because they had no commercial concept, but they had brilliant technical insights. So somehow the commercial concept had to be aligned with the technical insight, and that was no easy thing to do. But the point is, I had to tolerate people who are otherwise difficult to get on with, people that were just difficult, and that they'd agree to do something and then they'd get all snot-nosed and decide not to do it, or decided to slow walk it or foot drag it or something like that. So I'd have to go back to, now you get a choice, like, do I get rid of this guy? Because won't be easy to replace. The chances are very high that whoever I get to replace him, who has that level of capability, will also be difficult to get on with. So, and not only do I not achieve anything by getting rid of the guy, but I lose the continuity of it as well. So you have to make those sort of decisions, because those people are critical to making the business successful. If I don't make the business successful, then the board's going to take me out back and shoot me. So I know that. So I have to achieve a certain amount, as a CEO, I have to achieve a certain amount of success. Otherwise, I lose my job. I don't get my annual bonus, and things like that. So there's a lot hanging on being successful. Now, the annual bonus I could probably do without, but it's the difference between, for example, putting in that nice new swimming pool in the backyard or not, and those sorts of things. So I'm looking at it from a consumer point of view as well, and an extended view of the difference it'll make to my my lifestyle and quality of life and so on. So anyway, I have to tolerate that, or any. It doesn't have to be me. It could be any CEO. If they want to be successful, they have to tolerate that, and they have to work with the gifted people who are going to play a major role in making the business successful, which means I also have to, or any CEO has to share power as well. I just can't make decisions in a vacuum. I can't say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. If I make the decision centrally, then I have to convince others of the wisdom of that decision and why it's in their interest as well, and why it's in the collective interests. Because if I make a dumb, or any CEO makes a destructive decision, employees whose income and employment continuity relies on the business being successful, and they say, well, Mr. Billy Bob, that decision to do such and such is going to be harmful to the company, which is going to harm my employment prospects and harm my income. Therefore, I want to know why. And they wouldn't say it in this direct way, but they would need to know why that was successful. I have to share power, and I have to share some of the intellectual rationale and reasoning behind things. I can't just make a decision. Well, no CEO can. Not if they're in that situation and they want to be successful. Now, if they're the chairman's nephew or something, fine, they can do it differently. But I'm an outsider here. I'm not related to any of these people. I don't live in those social circles that they hang around in. So I'm a complete outsider. So the only way I'm going to keep my job and get my bonus is by delivering results. And I know that. And I know that I have to deliver. And I know that I have to go about it in such a way as I bring people with me. Now, some of the people employed there, particularly in the operations and some in the sales, they are connected to these folks from the wealthy end of town, and the chairman and his buddies. And I know that they from time to time hang out together at the weekend barbecues and so on. And I know that there'll be exchange. So how do you think Billy Bob's going there? And now if they say, well, Billy Bob's an idiot and motherfucker and then that's not good. So I want, without scripting them, I need them to say, at the very least, Billy Bob's trying hard, and preferably that Billy Bob's actually making some good moves, and I think they're working well. But the thing I'm talking about here is that anyone who has to exist in a market competition thing and needs other people, because you can't be expert in everything, needs other people to assist that overall success, but also the individual success in terms of I lose my job if the company's not successful or isn't as successful as the board wants it to be. So this causes a distribution of power. Power moves away from the center and it moves to people who have expertise and capability. Now, the expertise and capability can be the genius product designer, or it can be the hotshot salesman, or it can be the highly organized, on the ball, dedicated person in operations. I mean, they can be in all sorts of different categories of the company or places in the company, but or in the business. But a certain amount of power and discretion in decision making, so on, has to be given to them in order to get their commitment to making the overall business successful and their dedication to those goals and so on. So market competition actually forces that sort of sharing of power, which in itself is democratic. Now, it's not universal franchise type democratic, but it means power moves away from the center. Power can no longer be arbitrary, as in decision making. You can't impose things on others. You have to get them to agree to it. And sometimes they don't agree. And there were times, a number of times when I was forced, if you will, to not follow through on initiatives that I thought were very good or helpful or would be helpful. Not that some of them weren't, bitter tasting medicine in the immediate term, but helpful in the longer term. But if I got too much opposition to it, then I just had to back down, even though, you saw, well, you're the CEO, you can tell them, no, it doesn't work that way in the real world, not in a competitive world. If there was no competition, it was just a monopoly or an oligopoly, sure. Anyone that disagrees with you or gives you attitude, take them out back and shoot them. But where you have to compete in the market, you can't do that. Now, this brings me to the next stage of merit, where the people who were the best, or very capable at their jobs, that in turn I needed, or the business, the company needed to rely on in varying degrees, but rely on nonetheless. They'd all achieved those positions by merit. None of them were affirmative action. All of them had achieved it by merit. Now, So in turn, merit created, if not forced upon, using sort of talking about power as an amorphous mass in itself, it forced on power this need to, I have to rely on experts who've achieved their position by merit. I have to rely on these people to be committed and dedicated, which means I have to share power. So power moves away from the center, and then power must recognize merit. Now, those two things are the preconditions, if you will, to power sharing and merit, are the preconditions to what we would later see or would later become democracy. And the Industrial Revolution, things like that, agricultural revolution, the mercantile revolution, these sort of things, were all building blocks leading up to not necessarily a universal franchise, but certainly where the majority of the population had a vote, or the majority of the male population. And we're talking, say, Britain in the 1880s, that sort of thing, where I think something like 75%, 80% of the male population had the vote, and 10 to 15% of the female population. So it probably was overall a majority of voting age people, or people over the age of 21, I think it was then, or over the age of 23 perhaps. So these are the preconditions. Now, as soon as you take those things away, market competition and merit, which is what we're seeing right now today in the West, the globalists are deliberately and aggressively dismantling merit and market competition as being a determination of or having really any particular influence over outcomes, and it's being into that vacuum is being it's replaced. All that's replaced with ideology, which is how it was in the communist. But ideology will not tolerate competition. It will not tolerate not in ideas, not in power. In no way will it tolerate competition. Everything is apportioned. So market competition, merit, all of that disappears. Ideological merit can replace it, like who's the most fervent communist. And you see and say, if you look at the works of Solzhenitsyn or other communist observers of the communist system, and I'm speaking primarily of the Soviet Union here, but you could really go anywhere with the communist system. The people are required to applaud. We've murdered 100 counter-revolutionaries, enemies of the people today. We took them out back and shot them, those damn fucking fascists. And everyone jumps up and applauds. Now, if you don't applaud hard enough or for long enough, or you're the first to stop applauding, or you're the first to sit down and we're talking, these applauses can run sometimes for minutes. You can be applauding for 5 minutes plus, and it's thunderous applause. You have to be seen to be really getting into it, really getting into the vibe of the heavy applause. I mean, your arms are hurting by now. Your hands are black and blue from the vigorous clapping, and you can barely stand up, but that doesn't matter. Too bad. If you're one of the first few to sit down, they can, the secret police will come around and arrest you, saying you're you're ideologically unsound, and you've got to undergo re-education, which typically involves getting beat up a few times by the goons, or even killed or sent to prison, for goodness sakes. But so the ideology goes into the vacuum here. But coming back to market competition, when you're competing in products and services delivery, and competing on the basis of merit, coming first in the exam, so you first in university, so you get the best job, these sorts of things, it creates a form of democracy. Now, people that succeed based on merit tend to want to surround themselves with people who've succeeded on merit. Now, it's not a perfect form. It doesn't happen every single time. You'll always get the insecure person that wants to surround themselves with morons. You always will get that. But the point is, when you've succeeded by merit, you tend to surround yourself and want to be with people who've succeeded by merit. It's close to an ironclad law. It's the birds of a feather concept flocking together. It's an element of that in there, but it's actually more than that. It's where the people that you gather around you believe in, impartiality. They believe in working hard. They believe in studying hard. They believe in delivering the best quality service. They believe in attracting the most talented people. There's a whole lot of things they on balance, greater balance of likelihood will agree on, and will share an independent measuring. They'll be confident that an independent measuring system, as in merit here, will function more or less, successfully most of the time. And again, it won't be perfect. Again, the chairman will always hire his idiot nephew. I mean, that's still going to happen. But outside of those sort of things, or the deeply insecure person has to hire morons. But outside of that, then merit will separate and diffuse power away from the centre, and also will create an environment for sharing and for agreeing on how to move forward. For example, and I don't want to waffle for too long here, but say I'm hiring an executive. For example, I'm hiring another executive. So I'm the EVP or the CEO, and I'm hiring, say, VP or a junior VP or something like that. Firstly, I want to treat the people coming in with the utmost respect, because they've achieved things in their own right, and I want to respect that, and I want them to know that I respect it. I think that's very important. I'm not going to talk to them like they're a child or some sort of wayward kid that needs to be finger wagged, or where I've got to give them the big stern lecture of, you dare defy me and you're out of a job. Yeah, that's bullshit. That's bullshit. I want them to come and work at the place because they want to contribute, because they have things to contribute, because they want to share the goals and objectives that the company has or the business has. And I may share with them why, the challenges, for example, that we're facing, why we're not making the sales targets that we want to, or why we're not releasing new products at the rate we think we need to, those sort of things. So, well, these are the challenges. How can you help us solve these problems or overcome these challenges or achieve greater, more worthwhile outcomes and so on in a commercial sense? So I'll try and engage them, and I want to know that they understand these problems or challenges or objectives. They want to take them on board. Now, they don't have to be loyal to me personally. Now, this is another aspect of democracy and merit and diffusion of power. I don't need personal loyalty. I mean, if I get it, that's fine, but I don't need it. It's not a requirement. I want them to be loyal and committed to the objectives and goals that we agree on. The company's got commercial goals and objectives. I want them to be committed to that. And I don't, expect treachery or something, those sort of things, but to commit to those goals, and we honestly and based on merit pursue those goals. Now, they may be highly skilled at turning cartwheels or somersaults or something, but whatever that skill is, that's where I'd like them to be primarily involved, to so they can deliver the maximum benefit of their skills for the common good and the common objective. Which brings me now to the last point: the merit and market competition have to recognise the common good. You have to deliver goods and products that are the most, according to the consumer at least, most benefit to the consumer or to the wider marketplace and the competitive markets. Then they'll buy your shit and not the other guys, or buy more of your shit than they will from the folks down the road. So this competition creates a degree of productive return, because you have to stop pursuing wasteful. If it's not delivering results, you have to stop it or do it differently or do it better. But you can't keep on doing the same things. Now, ideologically, if you don't get what you want, ideologically, the globalists are having trouble convincing the white Western population that what the globalist project is worthwhile. Instead of changing course or trying to bring people on board or saying, well, this is why it's, instead of doing any of that, they just rely on heavier and heavier doses of brute propaganda, brute force each time. When people don't go and watch the latest crap Indiana Jones movie, because there's a bunch of globalist bullshit propaganda, instead of saying, well, gee, our propaganda's not working, or we need to do it differently, or instead of that, they say, that just proves that they're all fucking Nazis, and we have to just double, triple, and quadruple down on the propaganda to crush these Nazis. So that's the approach of tyranny. and which is, I think, where we are now. You've been with Tassets today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.